Hello and welcome to the Third Sector podcast. I'm Lucinda Rouse, and this week we're at the Barbican Centre in London, bringing you a mini episode from Third Sector, the conference. It's been a fantastic, if hot, event, packed with sessions across 2 days with a programme of brilliant speakers. I briefly caught up with a few of them to give you a flavour of the discussions. Many of the speakers have been guests on this podcast before, and not least among them our first keynote speaker. It's Sarah Hughes, Chief Executive of Mind. Sarah Hughes, it's so great to see you again. Thank you for coming back onto the Third Sector podcast.
Oh, wonderful. It's great to be here.
There were a couple of points that I just wanted to ask you from your keynote. The first was an assertion that you made about the volunteer sector not thriving. Could you tell me a little bit about why you said that?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of reasons why I would say that. I mean, I think there's the money stuff, right? So the money stuff is more difficult than ever. I think the culture stuff is really kind of bubbling and creating a bit of tension in organisations, a bit of a kind of, you know, a tipping point in the experience of leadership. I think that need and demand is at its greatest level. And, you know, look, I have been in the sector for a long time. I am one of those people that thinks this is the hardest time, certainly in my professional career. And that's because all of these things have come together.
You talked about the difficulties of flexible working. What do you think is the future for flexible working at Mind?
So we will continue with flexible working. We're deeply committed to it. What I'm keen on is really having very open conversations about what the cost of it is. We talk a lot about the benefits, and the benefits are vast, but the cost of it is also vast. And I'm not entirely sure that we're really clear about, well, where does the accountability for that sit? You know, and that's where I'm talking about a new social contract with our employees to really help us all understand what is the expectation of work. And I think colleagues this morning have talked about reimagining the workplace, etc. And that's exactly what we've got to do. But we've got to do that honestly. And whilst hybrid brings us things, it takes things away as well. And both things are important to acknowledge.
Next up, the Air Ambulance Charity, Kent, Surrey, Sussex, or KSS. I caught their two speakers just before their session started.
I'm Duncan Bootland, I'm the Medical Director at KSS.
And I'm Ian Howick, the Executive Director of Corporate Services. So we've been asked to talk about trust in a charity, clearly essential when we think of the values we look for in a charity: integrity, transparency, honesty. They all lead to trust. We think that to operate in an environment of trust is actually quite hard work. It's a little bit uncomfortable at times, but that's okay, because that's how you build that rapport with your stakeholders. It's how you build the rapport with your trustees. And it's how we all work together as the leadership team and with our staff at KSS.
Duncan, for the majority of people in this audience, most likely not clinicians but running charities, do you think there's much transferable between cultivating trust in a clinical context, in an emergency situation, and just the day-to-day running of a charity, perhaps operating in a completely different cause area?
Yeah, so I think there is quite a lot of crossover actually. I think when we think about the clinical care of what we do, when we're stood in front of the patient, that trust the patient has in us has to be immediate, and that comes from the reputation of the profession. It comes from our reputation as an organisation, and that's true for the charity in general when we're talking about our stakeholders. But it's built upon a longer term piece around building trust through relationships, through good governance, through honest conversations, and I think there's an awful lot that transfers between the two.
Wonderful. Well, thanks to you both. Looking forward to the panel.
I'm Nadia Alomar, and I am Chief Exec of Clore Social Leadership, and I was really pleased to see that focus has been given to leadership, because it is absolutely vital. Of course it is. It's people who create change, it's people who work on outcomes and deliverables, so it only makes sense that we invest in people if we want to see the outcomes that we need for society. And so the session was really about, yes, we are all working within a really difficult context, both within the sector and society in general, but charity sector leaders have a wonderful opportunity to be invested in, to feel really valued, and to come out of their everyday firefighting mode and survival, to come up with some incredible opportunities for the people and planet that they work with.
And in terms of investing in them, what does that look like? Is that bigger salaries? Is that more training opportunities? Is that greater potential for peer support with other leaders, mentorship?
I think there are so many answers to that question. The only one I'm going to concentrate on is we talk about fairness and equity and paying people a fair wage and so on and so forth, but actually a lot of our programs and projects aren't being paid for in a fair way. If we're only able to include quite a small percentage towards support costs and overheads, out of which training comes, that's the problem within itself. We're having to obviously raise money for some programs, but also raise money through unrestricted means because programs don't cover the operations. The thing I would stress at the moment is actually value the fact that we have overheads isn't a dirty word. Value the fact that we have support costs, that we need them in order to thrive as organisations, that any successful organisation has more than 15% overheads, and that just needs to be seen to, really.
Yeah, my name is Amar Abbas. I'm Chief Executive of Youth Action and attended the Third Sector Conference today on the workshop on truly inclusive charities. We were talking about making a meaningful impact, making sure that the charity sector was truly representative of the clients and service users it represents. We were talking about board inclusivity, diversity and inclusion, and equity. And my points were very much about on the basis of to truly have a representative approach. The organisations at a strategic level and an operational level need to represent the communities that they serve from a diversity perspective, from a skills perspective. And also organisations need to stop doing things to communities. They need to do things with communities and bring them on board. And one of the quotes I shared was by Dr. Jawad Shah, who's a psychologist friend of mine, was people feel they belong when they can see themselves in the organisation's present and the future, and when they're not asked to leave parts of their identity at the door. I thought that was a really important message to leave with all delegates today.
I'm Catherine Johnstone and I'm the Chief Exec of Royal Voluntary Service.
And you delivered one of the keynotes this morning in which you talked about the need for people who don't know each other to work together in community.
Yeah, I certainly did, all under the banner of volunteering. Talked about the fact that we need a volunteer revolution. There is no shortage of people in communities, as seen in the pandemic, in the Big Help Out, lots of other initiatives of people who really want to engage in their community. They really want to sort of play their part. But historically, it's actually quite difficult for people to find their volunteering opportunities. And actually what we're calling for is to rethink the size and shapes of roles, more entry-level roles, more use of tech, more sharing and collaboration. Think about connecting people to causes rather than to brands. The way in which we have developed our volunteering over the last sort of 50, 60 years has very much lent towards the older life course, pre-retirees. People had time on their hands, and that is great, and we are eternally grateful for the ageing population to have just carried on doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But now is the time for younger people from different backgrounds, because actually volunteering is good for you. It's good for your mental health, physical health. And in a world where actually in the UK we're pretty low on trust at the moment, connecting in community is absolutely essential, and volunteering is a really great way of doing it.
Hi, I'm James Fletcher. I'm the chair of the KFC Youth Foundation. So I and Mary Rose Gunn from the Four were talking about how it is to be a grant maker and a funder in 2025.
And how is it?
It's tough. It's tough for the whole charity sector. We've all received more applications than we ever have before, and that's because charities are facing really tough times. Funding is really complicated for charities. Unrestricted funding is needed more than ever. Mary Rose and I were trying to state the case for unrestricted funding, for an inclusive grant-making sector, and accessible applications too.
Sounds easier said than done.
Absolutely, but I think that some grant makers, including the KFC Youth Foundation, are making headways on this. We are already a very accessible grant maker. We allow applications to come in via various means. We try best we can accommodate the never-ending tidal wave of demands for impact measurements and reporting from other grant makers too.
And how are you coping with demand?
Our team is working really hard, but it's our role in the sector to be here for our grantees and to make the case, like I've been doing today, for other people to follow us in making the grant-making sector more inclusive.
And can you give me a specific way that you are increasing inclusivity and something that you think other funders could take on as well?
Sure. So we allow our grantees to, or potential grantees, to send in videos as well as written applications. So if the written word is not really your thing, or you feel like you can't express yourself or the amazing stuff your charity does by the written word, then video is for you, and vice versa. We try to get young people from previous grantees who've already received funding from the KFC Youth Foundation to be involved in the decision-making process. It's not just about the trustees of the foundation. It's about everyone involved in the youth sector, so we can get some young people's voices and decision making into our processes too.
We hope you enjoyed this taste of Third Sector, the conference. It's an annual event, so if this snapshot has tickled your fancy, we'd love to see you there next year. We'll be back with our usual podcast format next week, and the final episode of our limited series When Charity Goes Wrong is out now too. It looks into the case of Mermaids, from the impact of its 2-year statutory inquiry on its ability to operate, to the realities of working in a polarising cause area. The first 2 episodes in the series explored Kids Company and the Captain Tom Foundation, and you can find all 3 on the Third Sector podcast feed now. From all of us at Third Sector, the conference, thank you so much for listening. Our producer is Jude Owen.